The 2022 FIFA World Cup kicked off on Sunday, November 20 and saw England compete against Iran in their first game on Monday. The team soared to victory after youngster Bukayo Saka scored 2 of their 6 goals against Iran, but their second match against the USA on Friday proved a less entertaining affair. However, many BBC viewers have become increasingly annoyed with the coverage of the sport and voiced their complaints. During BBC Breakfast on Saturday morning with Naga Munchetty and Charlie State, they handed over to Samira Ahmed for this week's News Watch. The first topic discussed was the coverage of the World Cup, which had been branded obsessive by avid BBC viewers. She explained, England's first match on Monday kicked off at 1 p.m, meaning that a shortened version of the lunchtime news started a full hour and a half early at 11:30. Highlighting one fan's complaint, Samira said, "Come 1 o'clock, Diane Smith acted accordingly, and said, I assumed anyone interested would be watching BBC One, so I tuned into the BBC News channel at 12:00 for general news coverage. What I was subjected to was 21 minutes of, guess what, coverage of the World Cup. Whenever we have any kind of sporting tournament, the BBC seems to become obsessed and really doesn't understand that this is not welcomed by all of the population." Samira continued, later that day the News at 6 spent its first 15 minutes on the World Cup. A decision that got this report from Ann Street. You started with an in-depth report on the first England game against Iran. There has been an earthquake in Indonesia with extensive loss of life. Obviously, the World Cup should be reported on, but does a game, sport, a competition really take precedence over a natural disaster? Samira concluded, in the coming weeks we hope to speak to someone from BBC News about the Men's World Cup. Earlier in the segment, Samira touched on the bias that some viewers felt the BBC had towards Qatar, the hosts of this year's World Cup. Samira explained, the Football World Cup has certainly made its presence felt on our broadcasting landscape, sparking rows over the tone and extent of its coverage across both sports and news outputs. Those two worlds came together when BBC One's coverage leading up to the men's tournament first game on Sunday, featured appearances from BBC News Internation editor Jeremy Bowen, and its analysis editor, Roz Atkins. Showing a clip of the coverage, Roz said, hundreds of thousands of foreign workers mostly from South Asia were hired and there have longly been concerns about their treatment. Zara Tindall won't meet Mike Tindall on I'm a Celeb Bridge, Insight. Earlier in the segment, Samira touched on the bias that some viewers felt the BBC had towards Qatar, the hosts of this year's World Cup. Samira explained, the Football World Cup has certainly made its presence felt on our broadcasting landscape, sparking rows over the tone and extent of its coverage across both sports and news outputs. Those two worlds came together when BBC One's coverage leading up to the men's tournament first game on Sunday, featured appearances from BBC News Internation editor Jeremy Bowen, and its analysis editor, Roz Atkins. Showing a clip of the coverage, Roz said, hundreds of thousands of foreign workers mostly from South Asia were hired and there have longly been concerns about their treatment. Back in the studio, Samira added, that focus of Qatar's human rights record and questions about how FIFA came to the right to award it to host this year's World Cup has featured extensively on news outlets over the past week. It has raised questions in the minds of some viewers such as Hugh Bolter, who said, I cannot believe the consistent criticism of Qatar throughout the last week, delivered by goodness knows how many different BBC reporters. This unbalanced approach continued into the one-hour build-up to the first match by Gary Lineker and team. If the BBC despise Qatar so much, I suggest they significantly reduce the size of their team out there or basically leave ITV to cover all matches. It's the first time the tournament has been held in the Middle East, and it's also the first Winter World Cup in the tournament's 92-year history. Usually, the competition takes place in the summer, but because of the extreme heat in Qatar at that time of year. However, it has been moved to a November to December winter slot, though temperatures will still reach about 25 C. On the field, England and Wales have qualified for the tournament. It's the first time Wales has made it to the World Cup finals since 1958. BBC Breakfast airs every day from 6 a.m. on BBC One.